diversify it. It's not a strange topic, actually. Virtually oil and gas economies have, for decades, been talking about reducing their dependence on oil and gas. This is not new. Even when the Saudi economy, we're going to be talking about Saudi Arabia a little bit because they are one of the gold standards when it comes to oil production globally. So even in 1970, Saudi Arabia developed a 5-year plan to diversify the economy, 1970, so that was decades ago. And the same thing they're doing in 2016, where they developed, what the current Prince Mohammed bin Salman developed a $72 billion plan to develop the Saudi economy away from oil and gas. We call it National Transformation Program. So I personally think that the Nigerian economy in 2020 should not be solely determined or be solely banked on oil and gas rents. Now, and why do I think so? Because basically resource-based economies like the one we have now are pretty liable to corruption and graft. And I think we're witnessing in our society today and so many societies in Africa. We have Angola, Ghana, who are just developing their oil and gas resource, and we see semblances of what we're witnessing in Nigeria creep up in their economies gradually. You know, when you ban solely on oil and gas, you're also subject to the vagaries of oil price and foreign exchange fluctuations. Once it happens internationally for one reason or the other, it hits your economy very hard. And also, apart from that, because of a combination of what I would call lavish fuel subsidies, economic development from other sources, and population growth, many oil and gas rich countries are having issues where their domestic consumption of the product is rising faster than the total production. So if you're producing oil and gas and you find that your economy is growing and even your demand from within your country is outpacing your production, and you're supposed to make money for the country by selling this product at getting foreign exchange, then you realize that you're in a bit of a fix. You know, so I think these are part of the reasons why it is necessary for Nigeria to diversify the economy and pulling other sectors, you know, to contribute to the cake, not just through the oil and gas rents. Like I said, only a diverse Nigerian economy can thrive. If we don't diversify the economy, we're going to be in a deep hole for a while. Currently, we operate in monocultural economy. Oil and gas will account for about 85% of our total GDP, 85% of our GDP incoming flow. So to handle this, the government, to be fair, has introduced various programs over the years. We've had SAP, Structural Adjustment Program, Vision 2010, Vision 2020. We've had the needs. And truthfully, all of these have had an effect because today, all basically contributes about 14% to Nigerian GDP. So there's been some movement in that regard towards getting other sources to get other ways to make the country grow and get richer. But we're not there yet because today we are totally dependent on the process of oil. But if we tend to ask what diversification is and what it really entails in itself, it basically means just spreading out the country and generating other sources of economic development and revenue. So it become less dependent on one particular source, which in this case is oil and gas. You know, but there are two ways we can look at diversification of the economy, actually for an oil and gas economy. We can look at it in two ways. Number one is reduction of oil and gas rents. In other words, you're trying to reduce the amount or increase the amount other sectors are producing compared to what you're getting from rents. So if you reduce oil and gas rents, you're actually developing your economy, you're diversifying your economies in many ways. And it's also that of fuel exports as a percentage of the total export of the country. Typically, most oil and gas economies that have tried to diversify the economy have seen that, yes, the sectoral composition of the sectoral composition of the economy has expanded, other industries and other sectors have gotten bigger. But even at that, fuel exports as a lump sum of the total exports of the country have really remained the same. So it's like we're still getting what we're getting from oil and gas, but we're growing other areas. And I think that is what we should do. Recently, a study was done about 2-3 years ago, about 40 oil and gas economies worldwide have attempted to diversify their economies. And it was noticed that for countries that's during the boom, when the oil and gas market was really in a boom situation, not where we are now, it was noticed that these countries were more successful in diversifying the economy during the commodities boom. In other words, it's much easier and more, you'll achieve more success in diversifying your economy during the commodities boom period when the product is really selling, all prices are high, and the international market is actually getting this product out. So it's actually better to make this attempt during a boom period. So the question is, do we think it will be wise to attempt to diversify your economy during the post-COVID era we are now, which is in many ways a bust era? Even though the opportunities, but in many ways we're going through a bust now. I think we should, and I think we can. In fact, I think we must try to diversify the economy. And the question is why? And I think the answer is also very simple. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's one of the simplest economic theories everybody learns right from when you become a child. Don't put your eggs in one basket. And there's so much wisdom in that statement that there's something things your grandmother tells you when you're very young, or your mother tells you you're very young, that things that you grow with and live with for the rest of your life. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think that is the basic reason why the Nigerian economy should actually go beyond just the oil sector, because it creates a sustainable cycle of economic activity where all these businesses and all these industries and all these other sectors are going to feed off one another so that the economy grows. Because if you're getting all your eggs are in one basket, what if that basket tips over and falls? That is a question. Then what do you do as an economy? If we are all eating from the same pot, then what happens? This is part of why Nigeria is where we currently are today. So what does a diversified economy engender? What are the proceeds and what comes out of so we throw all these resources, financial and otherwise, into making sure that we diversify and create other sources of economic growth in the country? What happens? What does it yield? The first one is flexibility. That way you make sure your country's economic health is not tied to a single industry or a single market. That way you reduce the risk on all factors. Before I got this wisdom itself is not far-fetched. Before I joined the national oil company, I used to work in some other place, and it was something I learned while I was there. It was a group of companies itself, and anytime we're trying to start something new, there was always a need to start a new company to take up that activity. And the question is why? Yes, because if this company going into this activity runs into a problem, it goes down by itself. Because there's an element of risk in any business. So if you enter a new field of activity, a new area of operations, a new business operation or whatever, and you go in with the entire group into it, if something goes wrong, that affects everything. But if you split it up and then share the risk across board, if anything goes wrong with one, it affects that particular entity and not the others, because in many ways they are independent. And if they have to trade among themselves, they trade as independent bodies within the same group. That way also generates a lot of efficiency and also income for the greater group. So I think it's the same logic that applies here. And also that leads to greater innovation and job creation, because if we have to just sit back and wait for crude money to come, oil money to come, nobody's thinking of what they can do to better where they are. Nobody's thinking of what they can do to leverage what they have. That way, everybody's just sitting and waiting for crude rents to come. And that's almost where we are now. We're just sitting and waiting for the oil money to come. And unfortunately, all money is not coming as it wished to. So we're not in a fix, because whatever it is now can be fixed. It also engenders a healthy economy. When you have multiple sources of income, it gives you a leeway. Then you have a network of medium, large industries, medium scale, large scale industries, all based on the anchors of what we call anchor industries. The anchor industries are basically oil, agriculture, healthcare, education. So you have medium-sized businesses all leveraging on these four strong anchors of the economy. And then on top of that, you have other companies who are also anchored on those other medium-scale businesses. And so there's a cycle, not this case, not a vicious cycle, but a cycle you engender that is actually very good and very beneficial to the economy. Now, this network I talked about, this network of businesses, transactions, and value exchange are typically conducted across what I would like to call an infrastructural connect. In other words, what are they leveraging on to do their business? What are they leveraging on to carry out their operations? It's basically the infrastructure within the area of operations. Because you cannot diversify an economy on thin air. There has to be a foundation. what is the foundation on which these innovations are going to be built, the foundation on which we are going to thrive? It's going to be the infrastructural base of the company, what I choose to call the infrastructural connect, but what typically economists like Dr. Ngene will probably call the social overhead capital. So it's this infrastructure that provides the basis for which creativity can actually be applied to the economy. And these things include things like transportation, schools, public libraries, hospitals, communication, utilities. So these are the infrastructure on which these other industries, which need to be built, are going to be based on. So if you actually going into diversifying economy, a robust infrastructural network, it is when we're evaluating conditions, something called a fatal flaw. If it is not present, it is zero. You're not doing anything. That means you're not serious about what you're doing. So like I said, there's a simple norm for a diversified economy. And I'll take the example of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia developed this, what they call an NTP, a National Transformation Program, which is basically throwing about $72 billion into the economy, into all facets of the economy, from tourism to manufacturing and every other thing, to services and every other thing. But before that, there was even a greater investment of $2 trillion, this is Saudi Arabia, into infrastructural investments. So before they start throwing money at the industries and throwing money at the opportunities to bring people in and bring ideas in, they have to make sure that they have the groundwork on which these will thrive. Because if that is not done, then there's not much we're doing. So in addition to developing what I call the infrastructural network of the country, which is the first step to actually diversifying the economy and getting it where we want to get in 2020, 2030 and beyond. There's another thing we need to do for the oil and gas industry, which will also generate a lot of, create a lot of investment into it and bring a lot of new players into it, because the more the merrier, especially in business, the more players you have, the more competition you have, the better for everybody. And that's this thing, even though I don't want to be into politics or to the political space, it's called subsidies. I think we all understand that a lot of the country resources goes into that area. And because of that, it stymies a lot of development, a lot of opportunities and sectors some of those monies to be put into. So I think if we open up the playing field and let the market forces determine the price of products, then the huge amount that goes into that can be put into areas like agriculture. Agriculture could be a money spinner for the country. And we all know this because we've been there before. It's not the first time we've run agriculture on a massive scale before, and that was the mainstay of our economy before we hit the jackpot in quotes, because the jackpot is not really, do I say it's not really jackpotting as well as we want it to be, as we want it to. But agriculture could actually pull about 160 million Nigerians out of poverty, especially for people who live in households with insufficient incomes for discretionary spending. So, and it shares linkage with virtually all the sectors of the economy, because agriculture generally produces food resources and everybody must eat. And from the surplus from which we eat, we have to produce other things. So if we can get some of the money that you put so much into subsidy payments, and I know there's a touch topic, but I'm not going to go too deep into it, but put into this place like agriculture, it could actually develop a lot. Then again, we have this fantastic program we call the National Youth Service Corps, which is, some people will say has almost outlived its usefulness, but we could find a use for it. Instead of getting those young people with talented and young people with so much energy, could actually do some things with them. If we put some of these monies into agricultural development, a lot could be done with these young people to harness their energies and make them focus on, not to make them, but in many ways encourage them to go into these areas, particularly while they are doing a mandatory service where they actually have to serve and serve their fatherland. It will be a good use of their energies to put them into spaces or into agricultural spaces the government has set out, to actually feed the country and feed us better. So these are some of the areas I think that going beyond, looking at from today to 2030 and beyond, by the oil and gas industry can actually push, because it brings a whole lot of resources into the country. So for other oil and gas economies that have tried to diversify, what they typically do is pull in money from the oil and gas industry and put them in so many places. Dubai have done it, Saudi Arabia is going to do it. We're almost at par with Saudi Arabia. And to be fair to Nigeria, we've done a lot in that regard. Successive administrations have put in a lot to bring in, a lot of resources into other parts of the economy. A special mention has to be given to Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, did quite a very wonderful job in with the agricultural industry. Part of the results is what we are still witnessing today, and what gave him the job which he is doing at the AFDB today. So these are the issues, and we thank God we have the oil industry. But the earlier we get out of that crude curse and move into other areas, into other more not more sustainable, but other industries that can harness the full energies of the country, especially the young population, then the better for us as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ikechukwu. Thank you. So I would just like to speak to the audience and ask if there are any questions. Please use the chat box as we wrap up this session. So my final question right now is to Ikechukwu, and I would say, I didn't understand that. What role do you think that the public-private partnership can play in enhancing the economic growth and development of the country?
Well, thank you, Tolu. That's a quite. There are so many aspects to that question, but briefly, I would say that that is actually the only way that that the Nigerian economy can actually make development strides it seeks to. And I say that because we know that the less government has to do with business, the better for everybody. And I say that because government itself as a construct is one that is not nimble. The government construct is very bureaucratic. The government structure itself is held up by so many laws and so many edicts and so many things that cannot enable it move as fast or as quickly as it wants it to. So it's only through partnerships with individual companies. And a good example is, which example do I use? Okay, we use the aerospace industry in the US. That is a very good example because that's a very complicated and a cost-intensive industry, similar to the oil and gas in Nigeria. When the space race started in the 60s during John F. Kennedy, then the government used to run everything about the space race. You know, they were in competition with the Soviet Union then. So the government was fully in charge of everything, getting people to the moon, getting all the infrastructure, getting the brains together, and getting everybody to do everything. But over time, you'll find that most of what has driven the advancements in space technology in the US is not really the government anymore. It is now mostly in the hands of the private institutions. First, Elon Musk's company, space company, SpaceX, which launched a rocket recently, actually did that with the support of the government. So that is what can really drive development in Nigeria, in Africa, is that handshake between the public sector and the private sector. Because if that handshake is not there and we don't have that handshake properly, we have this mindset. I think only because of the way we started as a country, when government was always providing free education, free power, free roads, free. But the economy is don't grow like that. So that handshake between the private organization, private sector and the public sector, a partnership between those two is what can actually generate the kind of prosperity we want for ourselves in Africa. And we should encourage more of it. And I think that many of the states, from Lagos to Edo, Kaduna, many states in Nigeria actually embrace that. I believe that over time, things and Rome was not built in a day. Over time, we're going to see very, very good results from that partnership, from those partnerships. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
All right, then. Thank you so much. And with that, we would be wrapping up the session. I would just like